Okay, we are going to be picking up from Daf Chavav Amud Beis, the bottom of the Amud. We are going to be doing Daf Chav Zayin. We're going to Yetz Hashem to finish the parak of Layachvar, and tomorrow we're going to start Cheskes Habatim. So we said yesterday, the halacha of Ula, that a tree which is right near a boundary, is if he's within 16 amas, he's a gazlan, because the first 16 amas of a tree, it gets its nourishment from the underground. The roots get their nourishment from the underground. So now we're going to go through. The Gemara is going to question where do we know Ula's measurement of 16 amas?
Didn't you say that the
Wait, well, where are you?
On Chavav Amud Beis, the last line in the bottom, second to last line. The element of Tanan.
Didn't you say that the roots you're allowed to plant it, even though knowing that later on the roots are going to be...
That Shitas Rabbi Yaisi, correct, 25 amas. Shitas Rabbi Yaisi is Zeh Chayfe B'tech Shaloi, V'Zeh Neteh B'tech Shaloi. Okay, so let's see it inside. Chaim, we're about to start. Let's go. The Ella Meditnan. Chaim, we're on the bottom of the Amud, Chavav Amud Beis. We're starting right now. The Ella Meditnan. Ula is learning his measurement of 16 amas from the Mishnah, says as follows. Shloisha ilanis, you have 3 trees belonging to 3 different people. Shel shloisha b'nei adam. The halacha is, Irei elu mitzdarfin. What are we talking about? That we have these trees that are mitzdarf. Now, there's in Shemitah, we spoke about this briefly yesterday, there's halachas, that you have to stop preparing your field the year before Shemitah in order not to cultivate the land. The halacha is, by an orchard, you have until Shavuos. By a field, the grain field, you have until Pesach. Here we're saying that these 3 people, as long as there's 3 trees, as long as they're within the Beisah, we're mitzdarfet, and they have a din of an orchard, and therefore we would get up till Shavuos. And you could do the whole entire field, you can plant over there. Okay. They have a status over there, and therefore they may be plowed until Shavuos. However, if it was scattered, it wouldn't have a din of an orchard, and therefore you can only do a little small patch of land right next to the tree. So the chiddush is it's mitzdarfin. The charshin kol, now on Chav Zayin and Aleph, charshin kol beisah b'shvilon, because of those siruf, we could get the whole entire orchard has a halacha you can plow it until Shavuos. So very clearly, until Shavuos, you see very clearly that these 3 trees are drawing nourishment from the entire Beisah. How much is a Beisah? Let's try to remember this. It's 2,500 square amas. So let's break down. Kama havaluhu trei alfi v'chamesh mea garmidi. Right? A Beisah is 2,500 square amas. Chaim, could I borrow your phone? I do not have a phone on me, and I would like to use a calculator.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, trei alfi v'chamesh mea garmidi. It's 2,500 square amas. L'chol chad kama matile. How much does it come out for each of these trees? Tamni meyo tlasin tlas of a tilsa, right? 25 divided by 3 is 8 times 3 is 24. So you take the change, the last one, the change is 833 and 1/3 of a square amas. The problem is, akati nefishale de ula. We went through yesterday ula. We said ula has 16 plus 16. It's a square root, right? So it's 32. How much is 32 times 32? Is 1,024. So ula's measurement of 16 amas is going to be 1,024, and here we're saying 25 divided to 3, which is 833. So Ula's measurement of 1,024 is much greater. If you look over here, let's try to find these. They bring the measurements. There we go. Ula is, you see, it's a 16 by 16, so it's 32 by 32, because 16 each direction. 32 by 32 is 1,024. Here we're saying 833 square amas each tree is getting. That's much less than 1,024. Okay. So the Gemara's question is, loidak, Ula wasn't precise. So how much are we left with? If you do 833 square amas, it's really 29 amas. Because to get to 1,024, right? 1,024, you're getting 232, right? So you have 1,024, you're dividing it to 32, is 32 amas, right? It's 32 times 32. However, what you're going to do is, if you do 833 833 is going to get to 14 and a half amas. Because of 14 and a half, so if you're doing 14 and a half times, let's see if we're getting there, 14 and a half times 14 and a half equals around right, you're equaling around 14 and a half, which is 29, right? So 29 times 29 equals 841 to be exact. But although if you do it with the calculator, it's not going to be bidyuk, the numbers we're going to the Gemara of 833. But again, it's around 14 and a half amas. Because if you do 14 and a half times 2, which is 29, 29 times 29 is 841. But we're very close. He's trying to say is that it's slightly less than 29 amas. He wasn't medayik perfectly. Correct the Gemara. When could you want to say, oh, I wasn't so precise? We could only do that when you come in the Chumrah. Lekula laidak, mi amrinan. How could you do that, lekula? Because what's going on over here is, remember, yesterday we learned that ula shita tells you that a tree within 16 amas is not chayiv bikurim because it says me artzecha, from your land, and this is not from yartzecha. It comes out lefi ula. You have much more that you don't have to give bikurim. 1,024. You tell them, which is 29. You tell me 833 is 29. It's 14 and a half amas. Ula saying 16 amas. What is going on? For the Gemara, no. Mi savris beribua kamrinon. We're not going, if we look at this diagram of 16 by 16, we made it a full square box. A full square box is 32 times 32. It's very clear. It's 1,024 amas. Zok the Gemara, no. Bi-igula kamrinon. So let's look at this. This is very clearly, it's a igula. If you take 32 and 32, right? Yeah. And you cut off these pieces, how much are you left with? How much is that extra? That extra, whoever went to a higher, my level of math wasn't that high, but whoever went to a higher degree, if they do the square roots and everything, it's going to come out that you're left with an extra quarter. These, all four, if you add them up, it's a quarter of what's going on in there. So again, if you have 1,024 and you're minusing really a quarter, right, what are you down to?
760.
760, he's saying.
Wow. So
it's 2 roots x 2 roots, or 4r2, I guess it means 4 or 2 roots. It basically is, we're walking away with bigula kamrinon, and therefore we're going to have around less than 833. What did you say? Around what?
760.
760. Let's go whatever numbers will be. The Gemara's 768, the Gemara's going to say. Yes.
I'm in.
Julie, you're on it. All right. So we're around to 768, the Gemara is going to say. If you take it a circle, Mechti, Kam, and Ribua, Yaisal Eagle is Revia. 1,024, and you pull out a calculator and you deduct a Revia, which is what? 256, right? 256 times 4. 1,024 times 256 is 868. Okay, beautiful. Wow, so you're left with
868 or 8,000?
768. Sorry, 768. Not 8,000, 768. I said 868, I meant 768. Okay. Akati pashle palga da amsa. There's still a discrepancy of a half a amma, right? Because 833, Ula was 833. Here we're saying 768. 768, you're left with a half of amma. If you look at Rashi, makes a very extensive the way how he calculated it. Because 833 and a third by 768 right, 833 minus 768 is 65 square amas. So if you have 65 square amas and you're splitting that 65 into really a 32 of a 32, then you're basically left off with another half a amma. Okay. Well, you want to go through that big note? Let's go through this note 6. Rashi calculates this as follows. Let's try to get it quite well. The Mishnah's figure of 833 exceeds Ula by 768. We have 833, 768, 65. So this can be made into a strip. You have 65 amas long and 1 amma wide. You split the strip lengthwise and place the 2 halves, again, to make it 130, right? You're better off, instead of making it 65 half amma, you make it 100. You do 65 times 2, right? They do it right over here. 65 times 2 is 130, and take the width from a amma to half amma. So like that, the measurement is the same. Now, you take kilo this fake strip that we just did, 130, you wrap it around the 32, right? So it comes out 32 and a half, so 132 and a strip of, what are we left with? 130 minus 66. No, you're 130, right? You're 130 minus, we said you're minus 66, let's say around. You're left with a little more. So you're left with 33, really, 32. So you're left with around 66 and 66 amas left you're with, because it's 31, really. 33 by 32, it's a rectangle. It's going to come out to 66. Then you still have to do another 33 and a half, another 33 and a half, and you're left with one last extra hammer. Because if you're left with 66, and you're knocking down 33 and a half, which is 33 square amas, you're left with mamish one last amma. Okay, so if you're left with one amma in each direction, it's a half amma. Okay, and then they bring down that Rashi explains it can't be so precise because it can't be so accurate because we already explained that it doesn't go into a square. This whole measurement that we just did, the 65 by an amma by 130, then we put it on strips and we're left with an extra half amma and each extra half amma, that's only going to be if we're going with the root square. However, we're not really working with the trees, doesn't work like that. Okay. So Akati Poshle Pagodam. So you're still left with a radius of a circle that's really 16 and 1.5 amas. Hainu the light dark, ulechomer light dark. According to the Mishnah, true within 16.5 amas, Batson should be exempt. Ula gave the round figure of 16. Therefore, he's learning it from that Mishnah that talks about the Beis Sol Indian Shvuas. Okay, now Ula ruled very clearly that the neighbor's property, right? Since it's getting nutrition from the neighbor's property, you're parted from Bikurim. Now we're going to try to slug this up. Tashma, Mishnah Bikurim says, Hakoina Elon, one who purchases a Elon Vikarkaoi and it's karka with it, maybe he must bring Bikurim and Vikoira. And he has to bring and he also says the psukim that you think the Rebbeinu Shalom, we say this in benching, and you think the Rebbeinu Shalom, my love, we're understanding Kol Shehu, even a small piece of land, the halach is you may be Vikoira, so it's a stira to Ula says you have up to 16 amas. And for the Gemara, no, lie, amos. We're talking about 16 amas, you got the nourishment. Tashma, another raya. Maybe he has to bring bikurim. However, he doesn't be kaira because it's the trees that he's getting the nourishment is not his. He doesn't own that land. We're medayik. Ha shloisha. Maybe v'kaira. My love, again, the same havmina, it's a kol shu, and therefore will be a stira to ula that says nourishment 16 amas. Here we see, even if you have a kol shu, the halach is you maybe v'kaira. Again, la yachanami, we could say the same halach. We're talking about b'sheisha say amma. Tashma, let's try to bring one more raya. Rikiva says, karka kol shu chayiv b'peya. Does everyone know what peya is? Peya is you're not allowed to take the entire crop. You have to leave, right? You have to leave a corner. It's called a peya, like payas. You have to leave a corner of uncut in order for the aniyim to gather it. And the chiddush is that as long as there's enough in the sadeh for you to harvest and leave it for the poor, you must leave it for the poor. And Allah of bikurim, right? We all know what bikurim is. That's what we were just talking about. The kaisel of prusbul, right? We all know what a prusbul was. Hillel was misak in the prusbul because people weren't lending the money. We just saw this pen. Yiyeh davar im levavcha b'liyal. We just saw this by that Gatas Gemara, the Lashon b'liyal. Okay, by Iyuv. So the halach is v'kaisel of prosbol. We're on Chav Zayin Beis now. V'niknen ima nechasim she'en lehem achrayas. And the halacha is nechasim that can move. The halacha metaltalin. The halacha is we saw can be acquired with nechasim. Now nechasim she'en lehem achrayas can be created with this karka. So what do we see from here? We see all these halachas. Very clear. The point we're trying to bring out is that karka kolshu is chayiv bebikurim. That's the raya. Forget about nechasim shem lachrayis. Forget about prosbol. That's not the nakuda of the sugya. The nakuda of the sugya is very clearly. It says that karka kolshu yichayiv in bikurim. Again, hachamei skina. No, we're talking about dafka chiti. That's an area karka when chavzan beis. That karka kolshu that's chayim bikurim is talking about chitin. Chitin in a chanami get the nourishment directly down. Mashenkin ilanois. Stafka trees, the ilanois go into the 16 amas of the measurement. Dikanami diktani kolshu. Shma mina. That only chitin can really have kolshu. Mashenkin ilanis, we need much more than a measurement. Just the basic understanding of a tree, of needing its nourishment, we need much more than a kolshu of a karka. Okay, let's try to bring it a little more tashma. Again, we're going to try to slug up ula. Ula miksasai ba'aretz. Oh, miksasai b'chutz la'aretz. You have a tree that's going partly in Eretz Yisrael. Let's try to show this to the Eilam. Here we go. We're on the Gaza border. Here's Eretz Yisrael. Here's Gaza, whatever you want to call it. Chutz la'aretz, Lebanon, Syria, whatever the countries are. You have a very, very, very large trunk, right side's protruding a whole. You see all these branches and fruit? Branches and fruit. Now, the halach is as follows. What do we do? Here's make it easier. Here it's in Eretz Yisrael already. What do we do with these trees? What's the shayla? Is it now? We all know something that grows in Eretz Yisrael. You must bring trumas and meisters. If you don't, it's tevel. It's us to eat it. So ila miksase ba'aretz and miksase b'chutz la'aretz. The halach is tevel v'chulin muravin zeh b'zeh. Because you look at the tree, we don't know where it's coming from. Some of it's coming from Chutz La'aretz, some of it's coming from Eretz Yisrael. The whole thing has tevel and chulin mixed in it, and you have to go lahachmer.
How close to the border would it be?
It would be on the Gaza border.
This sounds like the guy was kicked out of the shear for saying 1 foot on this side, 1 foot on this side.
Not really, because Taisus explained the 1 foot on one side and 1 foot on the other side. Taisus says, so we explained that very carefully. The Taisus says, that question with Reb Yirmiyah, right, that he asked the question, he said, the Midas Chachamim is 50 amas, a bird hops. So a bird hops up to 50 amas, after that it can already fly. So over there the question was, Taisus explains that we're not asking, it's very normal to ask such questions, which is, we find that in the Mishnah Zok that we find mechza al mechza means the bird was exactly 50 amas from one shevet to another shevet. So there is such a concept. So what was the problem with asking the foot? The answer is, the Taisus explains over there is that he should have known midas chachamim is perfect. And if the chachamim say up to 50, you can have more than 50, even an inch, a millimeter, which means his foot is sticking out, he's not a medad. That's why they threw him out of the basic Knesset. Right? Al-da afkuhu mibei medrasha, right? Okay, let's go weiter. So this is the halacha is according to Rebbe, it's intermingled, and everything is tevuchun. Shimon alayim no hagadol bechayev chay. The fruit that grows in Eretz Yisrael and Echanami is chayev in trumas and meisters. However, gadol p'tur. So the Gemara's understanding is like ad kan lei pligi ella the machlekes Rebbe Roshim Gamliel. What do they argue? The mar sava yesh breira. You can pull up to this tree and decide which tree, where's the nourishment coming from? Umar Sava, Rebbe holds there's no such a thing. Ein Breiro. The way we look at it is, the whole tree, right? We don't look at each part of the tree individually, rather it's one unit of a tree. So Hachmaiskina, no. Avogado Biptur Divrakal Pater. However, we could clearly make a diak that if it would be, even if the tree was within 16 amas, as long as it's all growing, the tree is in the chutz la'aretz, it'll be pater. So chayritzarach. Maskina no. The masik some. Now look at this illustration. There's a rock there, so therefore the nourishment each has their own root system. So what's the machlekes? If each one has the root system, yachi my time of the Rebbe. Why does Rebbe say we look at it as tava v'chulet? Fam the Gemari the hadri arvi. The way we look at it is, you're right, there's on the bottom is a tree system, but it's one big trunk. According to Rebbe says, Micah Mifli, Mar Savavir Mavavo. Rebbe says, look at the trunk. This is one unit, one big trunk. It's all the trunk. Enochem is roots on the bottom, but everything's getting the nourishment from the middle. Also, Umar Savano Hailechu Deikoi Vahailechu Deikoi. Each tree is independent on the other side.
So who does it belong to?
It belongs to me. That's not the problem. It belongs to me.
Merged.
We're talking about Truma Umeisters. This is my thing. I own the whole entire field. However, there's a rock. This is what comes out. There's a big rock that's blocking the root systems You see how this is what's going on? Rabbi holds, you see the aleph? This is the trunk. It's one big unit. It's one big tree. You can't start splitting it up. Oh, because the branches protrude to the left. Shein Kain. The other shita, Yeshim Gamliel is going to clearly hold it's independent. Zok the Gemara. Is this really true? Ulas v'sheiches ha'ama v'sulai. V'atnan, we learned in our Mishnah, Machikan se'ilah min abar esim chamish ama. Clearly says in our Mishnah that you must distance yourself from a neighbor's pit 25 amas. So how could you tell me only 16? Right? Very clearly says up to 25 amas. Amabayo mezel tuva azli. The extensive root system could go up to 25 amas and it'll cause you damage. However, the nourishment is only 16 amas. Achachushi loy mechachashi, which means they drain the earth of its nutrition. Ela achik says amot fei loy mechashi doesn't drain anything. It just extensive roots that are not pulling out any energy. They inquired over Rabbi Yechon as follows: Elon hasamuch lametzer betoich sheishesrei amma. Now, this mamish just question: what is the halach of bikurim? You have a tree within 16 amas. Amalei mamish like ula gazlin who? He's a gazlin. Ve'ein mevin mimeno bikurim mamish ula the way ula tights it up. Gasa Rabban Rabbi Yechonon when he arrived in Bavel, came from Bavel from Eretz Yisrael. He said the name of Rabbi Yechonon. Echad Elon hasamuch lametzar ve'echad Elon hanoite. Whether the tree is planted within 16 amas, or even the branches extend over the property, maybe v'kaire. Why? We just learned it's taking the nutrition. Shaminas kain hinchel Yeshua Yisrael es haaretz. So it's on that condition that Yeshua is Masakin, that we're going to be Yair Sheretz Yisrael, that one is entitled to plant a tree mamish near his neighbor's boundary. He's not considered a thief. And it is mutter. Okay? Let's see the Mishnah on Chav Zayin and Beis. Elon shunaita listei chaver. You have the branches of one tree extends over your neighbor's field. The halacha is kaitzitz. Let's see this. You have the tree, beautiful tree, and it's on my field, so it's blocking me a little. The halacha is kaitzitz malay hamardeya agaber machresha. Do you see he has a mardeya? He has a thing. Mardeya is this ox, so he's able to go as long as to raise this ox goad. It's called. Okay. Over the plow, ubecharov, ubeshikma, which is the branches. We already learned many times. It's very dense. Keneged ha mishkailis. Mishkailis means along the plumb line. Look at this plumb line. Do we see us? I'm not sure exactly. It doesn't say how exactly how high it was, but it sounds like it was quite high.
What is a plumb line?
What is a plumb line? It's a very good question. I'm assuming what?
Rose plums?
No. Plum is, and I would think if anything, not as a fruit.
Straight.
I would think if anything, it's a more of an irrigation word. When you say
Straight. When
Plumb line is,
something is plumb, it's straight.
Like
what's the purpose of putting it? That's
carpenter's ruler that you have.
Right. But I'm not sure the purpose of putting that plumb line. I'm not sure the purpose of it. Maybe it's just a way of the people did it to know where exactly, like Chaim saying, exactly where the field ends. It's almost like this, when you call 8-1, they put these flags, possibly. Okay. We learned in the beginning of the first parak, where a person could just put on these boundary markers, but it doesn't sound like it. It says a mishkailas. Okay, beis hashlachin. The neighbor's property is irrigated field, then call the elon keneged mishkailas. Then all the trees, because you need the sun. You need the sunlight. Abshalai mekol elon srak, and the Gemara is going to explain if he's arguing keneged ha mishkailas. All the branches of these trees, because it doesn't bear fruit. The Gemara is going to explain he's going to Chumra L'Kula. Iboilu, right away. Abishol just told us that by the Elon Strak, you go Keneged Ha Mishkailas along this whole plumb line. Now, do we saw Abishol Reisha Kai? He's going in the first case, which is a regular field. Oi Asefa Kai, which is dealing with the irrigated field. What's the Shaila? Shaila is as follows. If Abishol is going in the first case, his machlekes with Tanakama is as follows. Tanakama holds all trees whose branches protrude may be cut enough as long as good enough for the Medea. However, only the Carib and the Charm and Shikma is along the plumb line. Abishol says no. That all the barren trees also may also be cut along this Mishkailis. However, if Abishol is going on the Seifa, what's the machlekes? The Tanakama holds all trees could go against the Mishkailis. Abishol holds that he's going Lahachmer, and Dafka, the Elon Srak, is going against the Mishkailis, and the regular fruit-bearing trees could only go up to the Mardea. That's how Rashi explains the Shaila of Tanaka of the Abishol. Abishol Reishakai Yasefikai. So let's see this. Tashma. Let's try to bring a ride to this. Detanya, Beis Hashalochin, which is an irrigated field. Abishol Aimer. Abishol clearly says, Kol Ailan Keneged HaMishkailos Mipnei Shahatzel, the shade Ra. It's bad, it's harmful, Leveis Hashachin. It's very clear that Abishol is only, right, he agrees with the Anakama regarding the irrigation field. Shma Mina, Aresha Koi, Shma Mina. Clearly, you clearly see that he's arguing on the ratio. And Amar Rashi must nisan nami dika diktani. What's it say in the Mishnah? Abishol says kol lashon of all Elon Srak. So Yamar Bishlam Areshakai Hainu diktani kol Elon. Why? The kol is coming to say that Abishol is more makel. You Tanakama are saying only Char v'Shikma. I'm saying even a Elon Srak. Aliyam at the Sefer right? So he's going to Chumrah. Elon Srak levayle. If you're going only the Chumrah, you should say only Elon Srak. Don't use the word kol, elashma mina, from the word kol, aresha kai. Okay, Elon, shunaita l'rishos ha-rabim. You have branches. It's going along the Rishos ha-rabim. The halacha is kaitzitz. The city, officials, whoever it is, anybody, has permission to cut it off. Kadeshi gamal oive v'rachbai. In order for a camel with its rider to be able to go right underneath, very clearly you see this, he's riding, he's standing, a typical height of a person is around 6 feet. On the camel, you could, if the branches are in the way, we find this a lot of time. When we could go, we see this a lot of times, even today, with people's trees, with the buses. A lot of people have it with buses. The question is, can you cut them? Where does this, guy 18-wheeler doesn't make sense. That's, it's not so common, but it sounds like avar. It sounds like a gummel and it's rider. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer. I'm going to see if it's going lahachmer. So let's make a measurement. Let's try to say it is 8 feet. Let's make up a number. Gamliel Rabbi Yehuda Aimer gamal ta'im pishtan. Ay chavilas myers. Rabbi Yehuda says no. A camel with pishtan, whether it's flax or bundle of twigs, and when the Gemara is going to declare, is it 8 feet? Because we said 8 feet. Is it less than 8 feet or it's more? He says the whole overhanging portion could be cut away because of Tama. The Gemara is going to question this. Oh, so what's the chiddush? It's pashut.
In other words, it has to be cut in a
straight line all the way up. Yeah, sounds like Mishkelis was quite a high, straight up the line. Okay. So the Gemara says, "Man tano." So it's very clear that in the Mishnah it says you're only able to cut the branches. You're not able to pull out the roots or stuff that are going to totally eradicate the issue of the plants, of the trees. The branches coming into the Shusra. It sounds like, okay, you cut it and then it grows, you cut it. Who's the one that we focus?
You cut it, does it grow still?
Sure, they'll go right back. It's just regular branches. You have to keep on trimming them. It's more of a trim. You're not pulling out the roots. So who is the one that we go, the way we look at it by Nizalkin? Today you have an issue, cut it. I'll grow again, we'll deal with it again. Amr Shlakas, it's already a Machlaika Shinuya that talks of Ever Abelezi. Ditnan. We're going to find this, we're going to learn this in Daf Samach. It says, Ein Eisen Chalol Tachas Rishus Harabim. A person may not dig a hole beneath the Rishus Harabim, or Bayros, or pits, Sichin Amayros. Why? Because we're very scared. What's going to happen is, eventually, what?
All in.
Eventual collapse. Maybe not today, but eventual collapse. Rebbe Lazar.
Dreaded pothole.
What?
The dreaded pothole.
The dreaded potholes, yes. Rabbi Elazar's matter. He says it's fine as long as you cover the hole, the strong enough roof that can hold a car or can hold a wagon full of its chayr. So even though the roof eventually is going to decay in time, so Rabbi Elazar will deal with it then. We focus on today. Rabbi Yochanan says no, it's not about. So we're trying to say that our Mishnah says you go bust it today is Rabbi Elazar. Now the Gemara says no. Rabbi Yochanan afilu temer rabbanan. You can even say it's rabbanan. Hasan zimnan de mivchas v'lavedaite. Their rabbanan says what's going to happen is you're going to put in this hole and cover it. It's not so obvious for the danger looming ahead, and eventually only by a catastrophic incident, only then the island's going to wake up. Oh, it was decaying. There's no engineers coming to check it up. Therefore, Rabbanan said it's us. It's very black and white. Every time it grows back, it's in front of you. It bothers the people. You cut it. There's no real danger involved, and it's very obvious that there are branches in front of us. Therefore, even Rabbanan is ma'ided that we're not worried about future damages. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer. Now we're going to clarify. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Gamol to and pishton echavilis mayris ibailuhu shiur der Rabbi Yehuda nafish, adem shiur der Rabbanan nafish." Which one is greater? The person riding the camel with the manchi on top, or a person full of schayr? The person who's higher. Why? If you're going to tell me there's a man that's greater, the question becomes, if you're telling me that if a person on a camel is 8 feet, and a person with schayr on top is 10 feet, how could the person ever pass by? Julie, I already see what you're thinking. What's going to be the other way? Elamai, the person that it's 8 feet is a higher amount. It's a two-way street. You're telling me that we have to say the Rabbanan that says a person that's 8 feet, we said, is taller, because how else do the person, if the person with the schayr on top is 10 feet, how can he pass by? Elamai, Rabbi Yehuda is 8 feet, then a person with packages is 7 feet. You have the same issue. So how could a person who's 8 feet, if the only shear is only 7 feet, how could he pass by? My answer is after the gachin the galif to say a rider could duck, right? You can move. A schayr on top, there's nowhere to move. Boxes have nowhere to budge. Therefore, it makes sense that it's the shear of a person is higher. Let's finish up the parak. Reb Shimon Aimer. Kol ha'ilon keneged ha'mishkaylis mipnei ha'toma. Any tree may be cut along the whole mishkaylis because of toma. We already have a price that tells us there's an issue of ha'ayil atoma, that if someone's underneath, what are we worried about? We all know that a mace, even as long as it's the size of a zayas, it can convey its toma just by being under the same roof. It's called ayil hatoma. Now branches qualify as a tent. Regarding this halach, it's a Mishnah, it's really an ayilish that talks about this. So it's pashut if there's branches over the public domain. Either we should be worried that what? A bird's going to pick up a aver of a person and leave it on the branches. And therefore you're going to become tamei. So therefore the stamazah you should be able to cut off the branches. So what's the chiddush? You have to tell me all the tumah for the Gemara. You know what? Im masnisin, in that Mishnah in Eilish where it talks about the branches, have a mina. What are we worried? We're worried that a bird is going to bring, the crowd is going to bring a piece of basra of tumah and put on the branches. So you know what? I'll solve it. Will be sufficient enough to thin out the branches, like what? That there's no piece of tumah can remain large. Kamash Malon to tell us we're worried that the branches itself is going to create a oil of tumah, and therefore all the branches must be cut. Hadron aloch layachvar, tomorrow in Yetz Hashem we're going to pick up with the Geshmak of Perek. It's a very extensive Perek. It goes on for many Medablat. It's going to take a full month. Ches Kazabat, and tomorrow is regular time.